Very good afternoon to all of you who are joining today for this very remarkable lecture, which Professor Vijay Khare is going to deliver. I think this is one of the unexplored areas and the dimension of Baba Saheb's life, which needs to be thrown more light upon and needs to be understood in a very important and in the contemporary context. Uh, Professor Vijay Khare has been researching on this issue of national and international security for a long time, and his PhD thesis was dedicated to bringing the strategic and security thoughts of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, in the public domain. He is the first scholar who really gone into the depth of it and published on this topic, and his book was published in Germany, uh, and also um, it was translated into Hindi and it was published in the vernacular languages. But besides working on Baba Saheb Ambedkar's strategic thoughts about defense and security, Professor Khare has a very interesting life in terms of his academic career. He is one of the very young scholars who could do his PhD very early on and started involved in the academia, since a very young age. And he is now a professor in the Department of Defense and Strategic Studies. And he's also a director of Yashwantrao Chauhan National Center of International Security and Defense Analysis. So he's one of the very important personalities in terms of the defense analysis. Very, very well sought after people whenever there are conferences on the security issues. He was also an Erasmus Fellow at Massark University in the Czech Republic. And he is very widely traveled person. He has been traveling in USA, Europe, even to the East, and talking about how to counter terrorism, what kind of a mechanism that we need to bring in so that we can counter the terrorism and create a very peaceful, harmonious society. He has worked on a lot of research projects which are of the national and international importance. For example, he has worked on third party mediation in between whenever there is a conflict between India and Pakistan. He has also studied and presented a research project, completed a research project on non-traditional source of conflict in South Asia. Then he's one of the very remarkable thing about Sir is that he's not only looking at the external security threats but also internal security threats. So his studies span a very not only domestic and international thing but also transnational conflicts and so on and so forth. Very importantly, one of the ongoing research project that Professor Khare is involved is in the area of politics of climate change. As we know that the world is threatened by the climate change, and this is very important area that we need to go into. Now, besides being involved into strategic and defense studies, Professor Khare has a very unique contribution to what we can call the social security studies also. So, for example, he has looked at the Millennium Development Goals vis-a-vis India's response, particularly in relation to the state of Maharashtra. So we can see that Professor Khare has that bent of mind where he can study the diverse subject with a very critical interest. This besides his research interest, one of the things about Professor Khare is a good organizer, and he is also the director of the International Center of Savitribai Phule Pune University, where he has arranged strategic conferences of national and international importance. Recently, before I go further for 1 minute, I would just like to welcome Sir. Sir, welcome to today's program.
Thank you.
Jai Bhim and welcome, sir.
Jai Bhim.
Before I invite Sir for delivering his very important talk today, which I think very important for all of us, he has just shared a very good news, and Sir's department is going to start from this academic year 2 important courses. And those young people who are listening to this presentation today, they should take advantage of these very unique courses that Sir is able to launch in the Savitribai Phule Pune University. And these courses are very important. Please note down the courses. MA in Ambedkar Thought and National Security. That is a very unique course. I think nowhere such kind of a course is taught in our country. And the second and very important course that sir has now started and is going to commence in this academic year is MA in Social and Public Policy. So never, I think this is the first course in our country which any university has launched where social policy and the public policies are combined together, and that too in the university, which is one of the oldest university and has got such an expanse and such a history of in the academia. So, sir, very hearty congratulations for launching these two courses this year.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
So, yes, sir. Welcome, sir. So, without taking much of your time, I would like to request Professor Vijay Khare to talk about contemporary challenges to national and global security. And Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mangesh ji. First of all, let me say Jai Bhim to everyone. I know it's a Sunday is a special day, and after lunch, I'm having such a wonderful session with you. My special thanks goes to Mangesh ji, Priyadarshini ji, and their team from last 2-3 weeks. They are organizing such kind of lectures, not only lectures, but they are making history where new generation will get ready-made literature with them, with the different experts in a short span of time when we talked about the COVID. Dear friends, from last 2 decades, I'm spending my academic administrative skills in the field of national security, where I'm trying to conceptualize Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar thoughts on India's national security. First, I did a PhD in the Department of Defense and Strategic Studies, Savitribai Phule Pune University. Then convert that literature in a book form. Then, with the help of Professor Sukhdev Thorat, I brought the center from University Grant Commission, and then from last 15 to 16 years, the center became one of the most important learning center with the help of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Chair. And when I became a Dean Faculty of Humanities, then I converted the center into the full-fledged department in the Faculty of Humanities. And from last 2 years, with the support of Bharti, when we had a MOU with them, we have started the first one year postgraduate diploma and Ambedkar Thoughts on India's National Security. And yesterday we had academic council meeting where I proposed 2 important courses in the Department of Ambedkar Studies, which one is just Mangesh said, that is a MA in Ambedkar Thoughts in bracket National Security, where student can exchange their ideas, thoughts in the field of national security. Then MA in Social and Public Policy, apart from first postgraduate diploma in Ambedkar Thoughts on India's National Security. So all 3 courses we are going to launch online as well as offline. So far, we have limited resources, but I am getting a help like Mangesh ji, Priyadarshini, and all my colleagues across the globe. I'm very happy that also I just in the month of January, we have established the first kind of center, John Dewey Center in the Department of Babasaheb Ambedkar Studies, where John Dewey and Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, we can also interact different issues and will bring such all eminent scholar across the globe and flourish. The Department of Ambedkar Studies is the one of the best learning center in the field of national security as well as the public policy. With this introduction, let me start my presentation with when I would like to share my views. What should I talk with you in the period of COVID? So what I thought that let me first talk about the contemporary challenges of national and global security in the period of COVID. Then I'll link with the Babasaheb Ambedkar thoughts in terms of global as well as the national security. Now, let me, I'm dividing my presentation in 3 parts. One is that first I'll take at a glance of present global security environment in during the period of COVID and post-COVID. And as a layman, when we are talking about the Ambedkarite people, we must understand what is a COVID, what kind of CBRN, that is a chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear weapons, how CBRN used by major powers for their national interest, strategic interest, and what kind of limitations weapons of mass destruction has. And then we'll also talk about what is the stake of Baba Saheb Ambedkar on this issue, particularly to maintaining international peace and security as well as national security. Now, let me first bring out with the what is the future after 1st June, or in case the government of India or government of Maharashtra start a new kind of rules and regulation when we will enter in the new era. What will be the world? What will be the India, and what will be the Maharashtra? In my assessment, there will be a paradigm shift in terms of understanding to each other. Post COVID-19 global security order and geopolitics will be completely changed. But at the same time, when people talks about lot of news you are listening, or uh, we all are discussing about the China's limitation, most of the vulnerable language media, they are banning, they are just banning the China's commodity. But is it going to happen? That is my question. And what are our limitation as well as what is our strength? Now, my first is that look at the global security order. After First World War, the League of Nations was established by Victory State. Sorry, after First World War, League of Nations was established by Victory State, and the main purpose of the League of Nations to maintain a collective security system. They have developed a collective security system. That means the victory state, along with the member state, they come to the understanding that your security is mine security. So they includes military, economic, as well as the health security issue. Whereas after when League of Nations failed to maintain the international peace and security, the Second World War started, and the 1939 to 45 we had Second World War, and during the Second World War period, there was a establishment called a United Nations, and the UN system basically talks about to maintain international peace and security system. Again, it is a continuation of League of Nations with the objective of collective security system. Whereas now the world will be shifted from collective security to individual security. Take an example of recent EU meeting, European state, when they come together, each one talked about their individual security perception. Particularly in Italy and Spain, there is they point a finger on European Union that look, all European countries not help them in that way, and they are going to revise the Schengen visa policy. Take example of Brexit. Instead of means the historical legacy of United Kingdom, but they come up with the Brexit. So what is this? This is new kind of threat is beginning emerging at the global security environment, where individual state is becoming a main actor. Or take an example of Trump administration is using a slogan called America First, then the rest. Even he withdraw the financial assistance to the WHO as well as the climate change. So my first take on this issue, then in post geopolitics, world will be shift. Means the first means with the weapons of mass destruction, there will be a new actor will be important. That is a healthcare system. Now, again, from 1945 to 2020, look at the world when we talked about the military capability or economic capability. You all aware that the if any country, how we calculate the power can calculate by pursuit PP into C plus E plus M into S plus W. That is a pursuit power, critical mass, economic capability, uh, critical mass is military capability into strategic will. So that is the structure given by Western world, and they thought that if they possess the weapons of mass destruction, they can play important role at a global security environment, and that was the case. But that concept has been changed after 9/11, when 10 terrorists they attacked on Twin Tower and the Pentagon Center. Then people talks about there is a need to understand the human security, and before that there was a concept called a human security across the globe. People talks about including the military capability as well as economic capability. What is important? The human security. But now, with the human security, one important actor is emerging at a global level, particularly in a post-COVID period. That is the healthcare system. Then, third, my stake is that US and China remain as a global power. Although people talk about the China, we should isolate the China from global power politics, but look at the Chinese and the American economy. More than 20 trillion economic trillion dollar economy both are possessing, and it would be difficult to bypass the both power. Even most of the media is showing how US is failed to maintain healthcare system, and some of the Indian people, when they wanted to use the hyper nationalism, they are saying that US and China is going to collapse and India is going to become a global order. So in my understanding and my strategic stake on that, this will not happen anyway, because look at the Indian economy, look at the Indian issues, particularly 30 means the 3 crore migrant labor, how they are transferring. Even from last 2 months, we are not focusing on them. So we have limitations as well as the positive things in that way, but I'll talk later on that. So first, US and China will remain as a global power with the condition, first, particularly when we talk about the China, we need to understand the China, because without understanding China, it would be very difficult. And Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar rightly pointed out in 1954, when we had a Panchashil agreement with China, then Babasaheb Ambedkar opposed to the Nehru's foreign policy, and he said that, look, Mr. Nehruji, in international relation, particularly in foreign policy, national interest is very important. When Nehru used the Panchashil agreement, word they call it is the Panchashil agreement on the 5 principle of Buddhas. That time Babasaheb Ambedkar opposed on that. I'll come later on this issue. But what I'm saying here, in a present contemporary global order or geopolitics, don't forget that there is a alternative mechanism will come, and we will bypass to the US or China, and there is another power will come. That will not happen. But one important, there are 6 important indicators while understanding the China's economic and military capability. In fact, today China may have a 20+ trillion dollar economy, and she has possessing a military as well as economic capability. But there are 6 important indicators we have to understand. One is the Taiwan, how China handles the Taiwan issue. That is very important. Second is the Tibet, where entire Tibet issue in Daladrome. Third is a Manchuria. Fourth is a Mongolia. Fifth is a Hong Kong and Xinjiang province. These are the 6 indicators where China has a problem. But if Chinese government manage this issue through the different way, then China, we cannot alter global power politics. But in case anything happen in the Hong Kong as well as the Taiwan, then entire global community may come together, and Chinese power may shift in a other way. But that will not happen, because the kind of military capabilities China is possessing. Then last important, what will happen at global level, and particularly what will impact on Indian people, particular people like us, when we talked about what is our future. Particularly, there will be a complete divide in the name of digital economy and material economy. But that is the digital economy and material economy will divide us. Earlier, it was the caste-based, class-based discrimination, and people divide to each other. But this post-COVID, in a global power structure as well as a national power structure, there will be complete divide in terms of knowledge workers versus unskilled knowledge workers. So this is a major challenges we will have it in future, and then how we will cope up with these challenges. Because look at our gross enrollment ratio in higher education. Government of India is claiming that gross inventory high ratio is around 25 to 30%, but in practical that is not that much. And even enrollment in scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, their numbers is very high in the field of social sciences and humanities. When we talk about the technology, our number is very limited. So other round of the thinking that when we such kind of post-COVID, these challenges will come. The first victim will be Dalits, tribals, and obese and minorities. They will be the first victim in the field of the development. Now, let me, before begin with the national security issue, let me come to that at a glance. What is a CBRN? Because we need to understand the COVID-19. Everyone is talking about the COVID, but COVID was not a new thing. It was from 1960s. That was the virus detected, and this is a series of name of the viruses. So we can't say that this is the origin from the China, and that's why, being as an Ambedkarite soldier, we need to understand this subject in a very updated way. That's why let me come to this problem. But before start to the CBRN, let me first again highlight the few issues. Post-COVID international order, the next 6 months there will be a zero migration from one place to other places. Particularly, there will be a migration, but that will be a white collar migration, where in fact US government just now is issuing green cards only teachers and in the field of medical area. Rest of they just hold on their green cards. So that will be happen. There will be zero migration from next 6 months. Then there will be a paradigm shift in the population and demography, because you need to understand this population now. Those people who are going to their native places, what will be their like? When Baba Sahib Ambedkar used the slogan that go to the cities, leave the villages. Now again, this is reverse migration is happening. So are they accommodate the old hegemony culture when they will go back? That is my first take on this issue. So the skill-based migration is going to happen, but that is not our population will migrate, particularly the white collar worker will. Then there will be a financial crisis and there will be American leadership crisis. Now, I don't think the Trump government may come, or Trump may come in the month of October. They have election, but whatever regime will come, but there will be a crisis. Now, again, at Asian structure, I said earlier, including India's security involvement, we committed our system on alliance system. Basically, we talked about the collective security system, whether issue related to climate change, whether issues related to international peace and security. But here again, what is my issue is that each individual nation state will emerge as with a narrow thinking, and that is real challenge. Means if take example of Nepal, just last week Nepal come up with the help of China, and they are first time in the last 6 to 7 decades, Nepal come out with a new political map, where first time with the help of China they come out that look at the Lipu Lake, Kalapani and other places is our territory. Although Indian government is managing that territory, but they come with the political map and they said India has no role in that. It means all individual state, they are emerging in a narrow thinking with the narrow issues, and that is the real problem. And second, important is there will be a fantasy thinking will come in a post-COVID. Anyone come and they will say that now we are going to become a global power. Now again, it will be very hard to restart the world economy, including Indian economy. Look at our statistical figure. RBI just declared the minus GDP in this current year. So that will be a difficult task. The modern economy is like riding bicycle with steroid. This is a basically it is depend on supply and demand, and few of the area where there is a scope, travel, sports, hotel, tourism will take time, where it will take time, including India, but there will be a difficulty. Now we had an experience of the Spanish flu where killed the many businesses, and particularly when you talked about this kind of issue, in my understanding there is one positive impact. Positive impact, particularly we can reduce are administrative expenses, particularly in a government public sector. Take example of if you today, earlier it was not happen. We never thought that we can all across the globe, we can come together and start a Ambedkar Karva. But now in a COVID period, we are now using this digital platform, and we are sharing our ideas and thoughts from thousands of students. Before that, I did it, I can organize the seminar conferences, and I had the list and I invited the people, and then I disseminate the information. But now the positive impact of COVID, this kind of new changes is coming up that we may call it positive. Some extent it is a positive. We will particularly we will stop our travel, and once you stop the travel, that will be benefit for environment, that will benefit for the climate change. Because when you are traveling from Mumbai to Pune, even you are consuming the petrol, diesel, and that will save the money as well as the time, and it will help to the environment. So that is a positive aspect of COVID. But it is not like a push button. It will take time. In fact, to use the Zoom software, it is even I'm using most of the technology software, but I have difficulties. So that it will take time, but we need to adjust with this environment. And India's health system is playing important role. Why it is playing important role? I'll come later on, because all are the public sector, and the public sector where, but most of the one must need to study that those who are the doctors and health worker, they belongs to maximum in the public institution, particularly they are from the reservation community, and they are playing important role. After this COVID-19 finish, we need to take a review that who are the people who serve, and who are the largest people who are not served. We need to find out the technicality in that. Anyway, so let me come to the what is a CBRN. Basically, this was the technique when we talked about the chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear warfare. CBRN is a weaponized or non-weaponized material, and that can cause great harm and pose significant threats in the hands of terrorists as well as the state actors. This will what is important, particularly including the nuclear weapons. Look at the Second World War, concluded with the 2 atomic bombs dropped by US, 6 August 1945 and 9 August 1945. After this 2 atomic bomb used by US, to till date, no one dared to touch that bomb. In fact, there was a possibility in a Korean peninsula, but somehow it was managed by the international actors, and we could not get any kind of result in that. But the nuclear weapons is a one weapon where there are the majority of P5 states where they have a stake in a UN Security Council. Those are the states: US, UK, China, Russia, and France. They have a declared state, or they can call as a veto power with the weapons of mass destruction. And when we had a first nuclear test in 1974, we call it as a Buddha is smiling, but that was not the case. When you are conducting a nuclear test and you are saying the Buddha is smiling, that is not the case. But that we'll talk later on this issue. But 1974 first nuclear test and 1995 nuclear test, we conducted 6 nuclear tests. In the same month, Pakistan also conducted 6 nuclear tests and maintained the parity in terms of nuclear weapon with India. And that is a real paradigm shift into understanding the concept of security after the 1998. And there are the few states, particularly North Korea, Israel, and Iran, they are possessing the technique. They can anytime they can explode a nuclear bomb, and this is officially everyone knows that. So why? What is important here? When you talked about such weapons of mass destruction from 1945 to till date, that was a misunderstanding by different stakeholders that if you possess the weapons of mass destruction, you can influence a global politics. But nowadays, this is not happen. We don't know where is a virus, but entire globe is now stuck down, and the entire globe, world community is now stuck down to the invisible virus. So this is the power of a biological weapon. Now I'll just go through that. first we need to understand the biological agents and biological warfare. Biological agents, particularly bacteria, virus, fungi, toxin, and that can rotate through the skin, digestive tract, and breathing route. This is a look at the history. In ancient time, there is a poisoning of bells, poison tipped by an arrow. Then 1347, dead bodies of victims in fall in the city of Kaifa. 18th century. So this is a history. In fact, if you look at the history in 1930s, Russia used a collar against Japanese. In a World War II, Japan used the biological weapons in North China. In 1951-53, US used the biological weapons in North Korea. And then after 9/11, anthrax powder used by the non-state actor. Now, why COVID? Now, there is a disadvantage as well as the advantage of weapon. This weapon, why COVID is now important. First, it is a let me go to the advantage. If you keep this weapon, particular biological agent, there is an advantage. One is a highly poisonous. Now people, entire globe is blaming to China that one laboratory is testing such virus and they have spread it, and now entire global community is getting a result in that. So this is a what will happen, I don't know, but this is one kind of theory is emerging. So it is a when you talk about to use this weapon, this is a highly poisonous, easier to store, handle, and disseminate. So if the theory come into particularly what people talks about that US and other states say that one library is the laboratory where they are deliberately pass the viruses. So this, if that comes, then you can see what is the advantage of to keeping the biological weapons with it. So you can easier store and handle and to disseminate. Then effective through all routes to entry, easier to control and difficult to detect. So I said earlier, we don't know, in the global community don't know where is the virus, and it is very difficult to detect. But at the same time, it is very easy to disseminate. So if one laboratory is the key player to disseminate this virus, that means entire globe is human communities affected. So now disadvantage, it's dependent on weather. Now why our figures are limited? Now once our rain season start, probably Indian figures will increase. So basically it depends on weather, temperature, wind, humidity, and effects not entirely predictable. Means that is the disadvantage of nuclear biological weapon. Now, first, I said when you talk about coronavirus, that coronavirus discovered in the early 60s. So this is not the first coronavirus. This is a and why it is a corona? It is a its name is a corona because it's a crown-like shape. And this was the 60s. This virus discovered. This is a large family of viruses that usually cause mild to moderate upper respiratory tract illness. So this is again how it transmits. We all aware that. Now there was a MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. First, it was identified in Saudi Arabia in 2012. Then in China 2002, that is a SARS-2. So we are familiar with the MERS and SARS, and now there's a new kind of virus in a Wuhan laboratory which has come, that is a novel coronavirus COVID-19. So this is the history of viruses, where particularly coronavirus we talk. Before that, there is a Ebola case. It's again is a part of biological weapon, but somehow World Health Organization has managed this Ebola case. Now I will not deal with this. I will also skip the biological history of biological weapon, radiological weapon. Now let me come to the national security concept when we talk about Babasaheb, understanding of Babasaheb Ambedkar thoughts in terms of national security. Now there is a paradigm shift. Paradigm of national security emerged in a specific historic setting. From 17th century till date, concept of security is no longer to only military capability. Most of the defense analysts and most of the strategic analysts, they define national security just focuses on only military capability or the which is only related to weapons of mass destruction. But there is not a single concept which focus on only one understanding. So national security, international security, global security, internal security, they refer different sets of issues and have their origins in different historical and philosophical contexts. We all aware that particularly during the Cold War period, the concept of security, it talks about only related to weapons of mass destruction, military blocks, military alliances, and particularly just they talked about the uh, uh, military mechanism. Now, but here, let me share with you issue. Generally, when we talked about the national security, particularly now in a modern period, in the present form, national security no longer to define only concept of security related to military force, which includes all issues, economic, socio-cultural issues. Now, when you talked about the Baba Sahib Ambedkar thoughts on national security, first come to the his uh, foreign policy and defense policy. Uh, Let me share a few his idea. Baba Sahib Ambedkar inherited the military courage both from his maternal and paternal source. When we talked about Baba Sahib Ambedkar, uh, he is very keenly interested to write a book on Indian Army. In fact, he was very keenly interested to develop a strategic policy which includes a different kind of technique which can develop for people. Now, when he revived the Mahar Battalion, the idea is that to join a British force means he said that there should be a compulsory military education, at least in the name of compulsory military education, Dalits can enroll in a education. So that was his policy related to compulsory military education. But when he narrated the story related to external threats and internal threat, internal security, he has developed a different kind of policy through constitutional provision. And from external security, when he was the member of parliament in upper house, he developed for strategic thinking, particularly China and Pakistan. Look at the world, look at the globe presently. India is surrounding two nuclear weapon states. Earlier I said that India is the only country in a global map, on a global map, where there are two nuclear power states. And today we had one war with China in 1962, where thousands of kilometers land occupied by Chinese in 1962 war. We had 4 war with China, Pakistan, 1947, 48, 65, 71, 99 Kargil, and now after COVID, probably there will be a chances with the help of China or through Chinese Commission, there is a possibility of the war-like situation with China or the Pakistan. So, and then look at the trends in our defense expenditure. Baba Sahib Ambedkar, when he was the member of parliament, he said that, look, when any kind of foreign policy you are framing, what is important? Importance is to develop a strategic thinking, need to understand the strategic culture. And first, he suggested the second capital at Hyderabad. Now, look at his vision. When we had a parliament attack, and on that parliament attack, look at the kind of that it was parliament was in session. All member of parliaments, minister, entire government was in upper house and lower house. And if that attack could be success, what would be real? Look at the present American administration. If tomorrow there is a nuclear attack by Russian on World Trade or one on Pentagon or White House, they have made a structure where at least they can the foreign minister, president, and other member, they can survive and they can formulate the policy. So on that line, Baba Sahib Ambedkar, what he suggested, look at the India, look at the history, entire attack has come from the north side, and Delhi is a vulnerable place in terms of security. Then second argument he has given that look at the south side, most of the south people, they feel that Delhi is far away from them. And even today, when the during the Manmohan Singh government, when P. Chidambaram was finance minister, and when he used his traditional dress and presenting a budget in a parliament, that time also most of the parliamentarians criticized on his dress. So this is the diversity between central India, North India versus central South India. So Baba Sahib Ambedkar used the concept that look at the South and North. North is not the same in that way strategically. Look at the history, and then there is a need to attract the South people so they can feel that they are very close to the capital. So he suggested second capital at Hyderabad, and Hyderabad is why suggested. He has given the statistical data how it is a centrally located, how it will helpful in terms of administrative, in terms of security point of view. And look at the in Maharashtra, we have set up a second capital in Hyderabad, sorry, in Nagpur. What is the reason? Reason is that to the Vidarbha people should feel that they are with us. So one session government of Maharashtra is having in a Vidarbha, and where they are discussing with the Vidarbha people with their problem. So on that line, Baba Sahib Ambedkar said that look at this strategic and administrative and strategic concern, and he suggested second capital at Hyderabad, and he has given this is the area where you can link with them. But unfortunately, that was not happen. But let me give me the now in between. Now there is a new concept is coming up. This government probably is going to set up a new capital, and that was not in officially, but what I heard that they would like to have a second capital in Nagpur. But where Baba Ambedkar talked, he said that there should be a second capital in Hyderabad. So what I'm saying here, this kind of strategic input Baba Ambedkar has given in that period. Second point I would like to highlight, and when we talk about foreign policy, he always says that India has a lack of strategic culture. We don't need, even today, what Prime Minister says that we convert in the foreign policy. What Defense Minister says that convert in foreign policy. So we don't have a strategic doctrine even today. Means look at our defense structure, defense and development policy up to 1962. Means whatever Nehru said that become a foreign policy, where Baba Ambedkar critically opposed to Nehru's foreign policy. And even today, what Prime Minister Modi and his team says that become a foreign policy. Now I just gave example of Nepal. We trusted on Nepal from last 7 decades, and just with the help of China, Nepal is coming with a different political map. So in a strategic environment, you don't have a permanent friend. You don't have a permanent enemy. You need to protect your national interest, and that was the strategic thinking of the Baba Ambedkar. But unfortunately, no one talks about that one. Then Baba Ambedkar also talks about the India's foreign policy based on adhocism. He used the word adhocism, and he heavily criticized the Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai. Now look at the just 2 days back, our General Chief of Army Staff visited in a Pangong Lake near to the Ladakh, and now one hand there is a crisis from the Nepal side, there is a crisis from the Tibet side. So this is a crisis, and that time Baba Ambedkar talks about Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai. This is a slogan is very important, but that will not replicate in your foreign policy, because ultimately you need to protect your national interests, and he heavily criticized on that. Now, earlier I said that look at the global map where India is surrounding 2 nuclear powers, and where one is the China and another is the Pakistan. Then the main Pakistan concept from 1947, Kashmir is the main source of conflict. Now this government changed the political map. The Jammu and Kashmir divided into union territories, and lot of issues are there. But look at the resignation letter of Baba Ambedkar. His resignation letter clearly said that without resolving the Kashmir issue properly, no one can get a proper sleep. And from in the name of Kashmir, we had 4 crores of rupees we spent on defense expenditure, but till date we are not resolved the Kashmir. Even today, we may say that the government of India is controlling the terrorist act, but the border level, border area, the continuous ceasefires, violation of ceasefire zones is continuously emerging. This figure is jumping now. Now, whatever non-state actor used the action in Jammu and Kashmir, they shifted that activity in a border area. So there is no peace in that side. So Kashmir is the continuous burning issue. And what Baba Ambedkar talks about, that is very important. He said that you need to divide Kashmir in 3 parts. Now, you may say this is not relevant in the present time, but that was a time where we had only 33 crore population. We had that was a time where we had opportunity to manage this issue very systematically, but unfortunately, we have not implemented Baba Ambedkar policy, particularly related to foreign policies as well as defense policy. Nowadays, even today, you may divide Jammu Kashmir in 2 parts, but I don't think there will be a possibility to complete peace in this area. Again, it will be after lockdown, there will be a crisis in that area. Then he talks about the plebiscite. Again, in the plebiscite, he said that give it to the Valley and Jammu and Ladakh should be one region, and plebiscite in only the Valley region. But that does not happen. Now, I will not deal with what is the contribution of our Ambedkar when he was the member of War Council member. He played a very important role to revival of Mahar Battalion. Then other social issues I will not deal with, but come to the Pakistan. Basically, look at the Baba Sahib Ambedkar thinking on Pakistan. We need to understand during that period what was the Pakistan and what is the Pakistan in today. Lot of thing has been changed, a lot of water has been flown from the bridge, but you need to understand when he wrote a book on partition. Unfortunately, no one discussed that issue thoroughly and critically in terms of a strategic way, and that is our problem. In fact, policy makers, they are aware that how to resolve this crisis, but Baba Ambedkar said that this is not an issue of territory. This is an issue between the majority and versus the minority, and we all aware that what is the majority and what is minority. Baba Ambedkar always says that without resolving the majority as well as the minority issue, this country cannot play important role and cannot maintain the peace and stability. But the politician needs to the issue of majority and minority, and that was the reason he wrote the book, and he has narrated all political map how it is important. But what he said that it is very important, and that is in a present form it is very important. He said that nationalism in relation to nations should be based fundamentally on a strong feeling of social unity. Now, today's nationalism, particularly focus on hyper nationalism, where religion and political interests are oriented, where Baba Ambedkar talks about the social unity is very important, and in a global level, Baba Sahib come up with the human human value is very important at a global internationalism. So that is very important in the present time. Now, when you talked about the Pakistan as well as the China and other part of the world, he said that particularly no one talks about why India is united from 1947 to 2020. Look at the state who got independence after Second World War. Take example of Pakistan, take example of Sri Lanka, take example of any other state in South Asia as well as Africa. They had series of issues. But from Kashmir to Andaman Nicobar, why we are united? No one talks about what is the beauty of that. There are the people, they say that it is because of the Indian culture is very good. That's why this country is united. Few of them say that the Indian bureaucrats are very important. Few of the politicians very important. But what is important in terms of Baba Ambedkar, particularly when we talk about national security? Now, why the entire Northeast states are with us, where they had a problem. Entire seven sister was disturbed in 80s and 90s in the name of Nagaland problem, Bodoland problem, and insurgency issues. Why Kashmir is with us? Why other state where they have disturbances but still they are with us? Because in Indian Constitution, particularly in my understanding, according to Constitution, these are the very important three important constitutional provision laid by Baba Ambedkar. And look at his argument when this article introduced in a Constitution Assembly debate. He argued with the members with the, for the nation building as a national unity and integrity. Particularly, these are the three important articles talks about emergency. If tomorrow there is a possibility of war, if tomorrow there is a weapons of mass destruction used by China and Pakistan against India, then that time President can declare Article 356, use the Article 352 and declare national emergency. In case in a post-COVID time, there will be a possibility that the economic crisis cannot managed by government of India, then President can use Article 360 and declare a financial emergency. And Article 356 is very important. That's why today from Jammu Kashmir to Andaman Nicobar we are united. That is this article is very important as per my understanding, particularly when you talk about this unity, integrity, and national security. This article, when it came into Constitutional Assembly debate, there was a huge discussion on that. And Baba Ambedkar argued with the member of Constitutional Assembly debates. He said that look at the Indian culture, look at the Indian society. Every 6 miles, there is a change in a language, there is a change in society, there is a change in a caste system, and you need to control in a one unit, and you need such kind of provision where you can have a flexibility of the government can have, central government can have power where that province can maintain with the central government. Then Article 356 basically talks about what is Article 356? Particularly any state or any province who want to separate identity in the name of political identity, in the name of regional identity, in the name of any insurgency, in the name of any terrorist activity. If any state to fail maintain a political stability as well as other identity, then governor can use Article 356 and declare a state emergency for the period of 6 months. Then the parliament also extend a state emergency with the two-third majority in the parliament. Now, what is important here in Article 356, in my understanding, is that from 50 to 2020, last 7 decades, this country is united because of the Article 356. Means no one, there was a look at the Punjab and the name of Khalistan. That was the time entire that moment was in peak time. That time governor used Article 356 and declare a state emergency. Look at the Kashmir from 80s onwards. Whenever there was a issue, that time governor used Article 356, then declare a state emergency and control that. So my assumption is here, what is important, this is very important article, but Baba Ambedkar also warned while this article introduced in Constitution. What he's used the statement, he used that whenever Article 356 used by a governor, that was his word, he said that His Excellency, he or she may use her consciousness while using Article 356. Means Article 356 is a dead letter in Indian Constitution. He said this will be a dead letter. This cannot be used as a regular provision, but this will be a dead letter. But however, whenever it need, governor or he or she may use her political consciousness or her consciousness, and that was warning given by Dr. Baba Ambedkar. And unfortunately, some of them may argue that 356 may misuse by a different state or different governor or central government. But as per my understanding, today India is united because of this Article 356, and that's why when you talked about the unity and integrity and national security, my understanding that these are the 3 important articles in terms of India's national security is very important, and all 3 articles in details. If you go through the all Constitutional Assembly debates, you will realize how much pain Dr. Ambedkar took to pass this article in a constitution, because particularly Article 356 was not accepted by other members. He argued 2.5 days with the Constitutional Assembly members, and then lastly inserted Article 356. And that is one reason today we are united. Although we have a number of issues, Although today do we have a diversity issue, do we have class conflict, culturally issues, but at least we may say whenever we call it our regional identity. But when you talk to Indian, first, as per this constitutional provision, we are calling as ourselves as an Indian, and that my particular understand. These are the three important articles, very important in terms of national security. Then, for unity and integrity, single judicial system, single citizenship is very important, and single administrative system. So this is a very important. You will not find any kind of structure anywhere in the world. Look at the world healthcare system in US. Some of the news you must seen on media, where you will find that most of the state are completely collapsed to provide a healthcare system, because their constitutional provision, they don't have any kind of proper mechanism. What are the central powers and what are the state power? Even they have a dual citizenship. They claim their democracy, vibrant democracy, but they have their own limitations. But that is not the case in our side. In India, why this government, although we may criticize to the government that this government declared as lockdown without notice or a short notice, but that lockdown successfully people are accepting. Why? Because we have that culture for last 7 decades to the constitution. So we have that culture that we have to understand that the central government is a powerful, and whatever central government is taking decision, that has to accept to us. So that is our culture. But that is not the case is happening with the US community. In fact, the president is declaring the emergency, some of the area where, but the state is not allowing to president that, and that is the reason the entire healthcare system, particularly in the US, more than 95,000 or 90 plus thousand human figures, they're already victims from the corona, the COVID-19. So what I'm saying here, look at the R's constitutional values, particularly when you talk about unity and integrated national security. So this is a single judicial system, single citizenship, and single administrative system. So look at when earlier in the 5 years back, or 7 to 8 years back in Maharashtra, there was a agitation against the Biharis population in Maharashtra, particularly Raj Thakre and his organization used that Maharashtrian first and then others. But when the IS officer, the police commissioner or IS commissioner, the municipal commissioner, if he comes from the Bihar, we have to obey the order of that person. It means we have from Kashmir to Andaman Nicobar, we have one judicial system, one single system, and one administrative system. And that is the beauty of the constitution, where we are protecting our unity and security. Now, one important point so far has not discussed by the many strategic experts when we talked about our present national security issue. Look at the Vidarbha state, look at the Naxalite area in Jharkhand, in Vidarbha, Gadchiroli area, or any other places, why this is happening. And what was the idea of Baba Sahib Ambedkar to division and size of the state? When Fazal Ali Commission report came out, that report came out with the philosophy of the one state, one language. For example, for Marathi, those people who are speaking Marathi, for them, Marathi Maharashtra was established. For those people speaking Punjab, Punjab was established. Then Tamil speaking people, they got the Tamil Nadu. So that was the formula adopted by the Fazal Ali Commission when state and division was happened. But look at the Fazal Ali Commission set up by Government of India in 1956, and then report came, and then later on the state was established. But Baba Sahib Ambedkar was the first person. I said this India, Pakistan, China, he won in 1954, and about Pakistan, he won in 1940. And here, Fazal Ali Commission gave a report in 60s, and then state was established on that line. But Baba Sahib Ambedkar started his thinking what kind of state we require. So first he started argument in 1948, then in 1952 and 1955. He come up with the linguistic states in India. In his book, he come out with the formula, and he said that what is important. Where Fazal Ali Commission come out with the one language, one state. Where Baba Sahib Ambedkar said one language, many states. And he said that 2 crore population should be for one state, and he said that have a one language, many states, so there will be no language identity crisis, and each one will be divided. In particularly, what was the Baba Sahib Ambedkar argument that look at this Indian society, it is basically discriminated and based on caste system, and we need to divide this caste culture. So there should be no, even up to 70s. Look at the southern state, Reddis and other dominant castes is in a power. Even in UP and Bihar and other state, there are the few community they were in a power. But 80s onward, thing has changed. So what I'm saying here, Baba Sahib Ambedkar argued that he said that by dividing the state should be divided in the name of not only one language, one state. He said that we need to have a one language, many states. But that was not happen, and ultimately today we are divided in terms of language, in terms of culture, in terms of poverty, and so on. And that is a threat to national security. Now, this is the data. Look at his, this was the picture he has narrated, and you can see how he wanted a division of Uttar Pradesh. During the first India government, they divide Uttar Pradesh, and exactly Ranchi become a capital. What was Ambedkar narrated this map. You can see the writing and speech in first volume. You can see that what is that. Even there is a one area is asking the separate autonomy from Uttar Pradesh. Now division of Bihar is happened Ranchi. Then Madhya Pradesh. We know that Chhattisgarh is a new state, and lastly the Maharashtra. Now earlier he come up with the 3 states, particularly Marathwada, then Vidarbha, and central, which Marathwada is and eastern Maharashtra. But when he talked about that Marathi language, a lot of people argued with the Baba Sahib Ambedkar, and he said that first look at what in strategically he wanted to set up Mumbai should be a city state like a Singapore, and that was his idea. Means when we had a attack on Mumbai attack by the terrorists, the entire discussion on naval capability of the Mumbai city or other naval capability and threats from the Pakistan. But Baba Sahib Ambedkar argued in that time he wanted to convert Mumbai should be a city state like a Singapore. But he said that that time we could not have that naval capability to manage the threat from this side. And he said, okay, we should merge into the Maharashtra. And then he come up with the one. Lastly, he argued that for Marathi-speaking person, we need to have a Maharashtra. So, but what he said that from 1948 position, 1958 position, 52 position, and 53 position, he changed his position on a linguistic state. But ultimately, what is his thought is important when you talk about the unity and integrity, particularly in terms of security. What is important? Unfortunately, look at any corner of the security issue. You will find that everywhere, Baba Sahib Ambedkar, whether it is a foreign policy, whether it's a defense policy, whether it is a agriculture sector, each and every corner, Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar argued. But there is a conspiracy of silence up to 80s, 90s. No one talks about Baba Sahib Ambedkar as a national leader. Even today's NCERT books, Baba Sahib Ambedkar refer as the Messiah of Dalits, and Dalitanche Kaivari, that was the slogan used in other textbooks. So what we need to revisit Baba Sahib Ambedkar, we should come out with the new argument and link with the present form and deal with the day-to-day life. Then there will be a real understanding to understand Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar in this context. So this is my just brief means what I can say that the overall argument on Baba Sahib Ambedkar thoughts on national security as well as global security environment, particularly post-COVID environment. how you can look at the UN system where Baba Ambedkar talks about the human value, internationalization of human value, he focuses. And post-COVID, what we don't need a independent or isolation nationalism. We need a human nationalism that was proposed by Baba Ambedkar, and that will remain as a source of strength for each and everyone. Namo Buddhaya, Jai Bhim. Thank you.
Sir, you have really taken us through a very extensive journey, I would say, that, starting from the international frameworks of, ensuring the security to the world, all the way from the post-COVID world, how it might look like, and what kind of a possible changes in terms of the international security we might see after the post-COVID. And also you have taken us through the very important thoughts of Baba Sahib Ambedkar as to how he ensured the security of the country by putting in place various articles in the constitution. And because of that, as you said, that our country is intact. It is because of this very well-crafted, well-thought articles that whatever security, whatever unity we see in our country today, it owes it to our constitution. Now, sir, there are a couple of questions that has emerged from your talk, and one of them is very interesting. That you said that Baba Sahib Ambedkar was going to write about the history of Indian Army.
Yes.
Right, sir? So, like looking at the history of our country, we know that the Dalits, the Doms in Bihar, and Mahars in Maharashtra, the Parayas in South, and the Chamar regiment. So, sir, can you throw a little bit light on this caste as the martial race? Because we know that there were a lot of subedars in the family of Ramabai, and Baba Sahib's father himself was a subedar. His brother was also working in the military, and so on and so forth. And the Mahar regiment has contributed so much in terms of right from the Afghan war to the Kargil war. So, sir, can you please throw some light on the martial nature of these castes?
Uh, it is that was a unfinished agenda of Baba Sahib Ambedkar. He wanted to have a look on Indian Army, and he was keenly interested to write a book on Indian Army. Some probably in government of Maharashtra may have that some kind of literature with them. So far, writing and speeches committee can find out that literature probably we can get that literature over there. If that is the case, then we will have a good wealth of knowledge. We will get it from that literature. Now, the martial race up to 60s, that was the case. But now the government abandoned the martial race, particularly caste-wise regiment. Although name is there, this is like a Mahar regiment. But in a Mahar regiment is not no Mahar is not only there. All caste of people they are in there. So any officer when he join as a second lieutenant, he assigned in that regiment. So apart from the caste, so there is no now the martial race is not exist now. This is the is, although they wanted to change, particularly Shekatkar committee appointed by former Defense Minister Manohar Parrikar, and that committee has recommended to revive, and slowly they may change the structure. But whatever, again, my I did one project and I have gone through all archival literature in British Library in London. What I got data, there was a report called a Peel Commission report, and that Peel Commission report, when 1857 mutiny happened, that time the Peel came and he get an interview with the several. So people gave a witnesses to before him, and it's recorded. I have that collection, and I'm going to publish in that one. So look, Britishers, they Indian so-called upper caste people, when they interacted with Peel Commission, they said you allow, you do whatever you want in India, but don't allow untouchables in the army. No. So, so that was the statement given by most of the vulnerable people, most of the learned people during that time, and that is history. We all aware that. But nowadays, present form in Indian Army, martial race as such, in the name of caste now, they are there, but they have abandoned that kind of regiments.
Yeah,
Thank
I was only interested from the historical point of view, sir, to understand, this the gallant and the bravery of the people, in the different wars and the way they fought and really, contributed to the world peace in terms of their contribution. And not a lot of people know, but you are one of the rare persons who has really gone into the archives, the British archives, and digged into the literature and the documents and the reports to really bring out this version, of the history of Indian Army to, from a very different perspective. So that was a question, sir. And
I'm coming with book, sir. I'm coming with that book.
Yeah, please,
Yes,
sir.
I'm coming with that book. Just it's a couple of months now.
We are very much waiting for you, sir. You talked about this international politics and between India and China. Now, recently, like 6-7 years back, the Chinese government came out with a soft diplomatic tool in terms of promoting Buddhism, and they started what is called the World Forum of Buddhism, inviting the Buddhist countries, particularly in the Southeast Asia and South Asia, like Sri Lanka, and they wanted to have a soft diplomacy to leverage that Buddhist trend and the Buddhist culture. In that, India also came out with what is called the Global Buddhist Mission. So, sir, this is a question that how a revival of Buddhism in this country lead to the peace, not only in the Indian subcontinent, but also, do you, as a strategist, how do you see the role of Buddhism as a soft diplomatic tool, or what is your view on this, sir?
Let me come with there is one strategic understanding, strategic thinking is that 21st century would be a Asian century if India, China come together. What is the importance? They have asymmetry, symmetry, or religious historical legacy. Asymmetry in the sense of economic capability, military capability, but symmetry in terms of the religious, cultural relation, strategic relation to each other in the name of the religion. So here is the possibility, the Asian giant, if they come together, that would be Asian century where we can use as a soft policy. But what is happening now, let me just discuss. There are three strategic triangles at global level. One is India, US, and Israel. This is first strategic triangle, which is most of the leading industrialists, most of the weapon suppliers, they are focusing this strategic triangle. Second strategic triangle, India, China, Russia. So China is your neighbors. Means India, China border is your more than 120,000 kilometers. You are surrounded.
Wow.
Then in a center, middle sector, eastern sector, and western sector, you have and your neighbor country.
Right.
Then look at the Russia, former Soviet Union, and now Russia from 1947 to till date. Soviet supplied 70% arms to us. So this is good opportunity to capitalize this strategic triangle. But that is one. The third strategic triangle is India, Brazil, and South Africa, where we call it BRICS and others. So in this strategic triangle, India is everywhere. So India's position is very important. Why? In terms of population, in terms of market, in terms of culture, and in terms of constitutional style or political style. So this is the world is looking at us, but there are different strategic player they have their own intention, which
Yeah.
strategic triangle can emerge. So the moment you try to develop a soft diplomacy with China, then through US, there will be different kind of theory will come. So
Yeah.
look at the, in between just 1 month back, the North Korean president is not, is ill, or he is not well, or he's died. That was the news. But so those in US, they are not thinking today. They are thinking of 2040, what will be the world. So they
Right.
are developing a theory in that way. So what I'm saying, this is the limitation as well as a positive outcome, and it depends on your leaders, what kind of policy you require. And unfortunately, I said we don't have that kind of strategic culture to implement such a to carry out such a long legacy. We are just working on the contemporary short-term vision and ad hocism foreign policy.
Sir, this metaphor of a battle against the like Baba Sahib Ambedkar says that my battle is the battle for the reclamation of human personhood. So there is this very important word battle, and most of the times this word battle is used in the military parlance. But in your presentation, you talked about different threats, and that security threat perceptions are not just reduced to your military strength or your access to the weapons and so on and so forth. You talked about all different forms of securities, like social security. You talked about economic security. Now, increasingly, this internet security is going to become very vital, and because a lot of trade and commerce depend on it, a lot of strategic communication depends on it. So, sir, my question is, as a community of the Ambedkarite community, which is fighting their own battle for their human rights and for their economic liberation, so how important it is to have this culture of strategic thinking brought in the society. And because if Baba Sahib Ambedkar was not a strategist, who he was? He was a strategist. He could strategize Mahad Satyagraha. He could strategize Kalaram Satyagraha. He could strategize 1946 when with the British were about to leave. So sir, how important is the role of strategic thinking in any battle, particularly when we talk about the social battle, the battle of reclamation of human personality, and how do we bring those strategic culture, the way to think through the things in the community, sir?
Let me put it this way. Strategic culture basically talks about how to pursue the power.
How to pursue the power.
Then equal to C plus E plus M. That is a critical mass, economic capability, military capability.
Right.
Into strategic will, SW. So this is a formula given by Ryan, and this formula, according to this formula, what is needed? You need to look at the subject not for political interest. You need to understand what is a national interest. But so far, no one is coming to define what is national interest. From 1947 to till date, only Baba Sahib only said that what is a national interest. What he said, national interest particularly to protect the core value of Constitution. What is the core value of Constitution?
Liberty, equality, right.
Liberty, equality, fraternity.
Right, sir. Right.
Whereas in a national security, take example of concept of security varies from country to country.
Right.
When we talk about Pakistan security, what they will talk? They will talk about the protect the Islam. If you talked about the US security, they will talk about protect their trade. So that is the dynamics of the security, and that is dynamics of strategic culture.
Right.
So what we need to develop that literature, strategic thinking, that what is our national interest, how to protect our core value, how to protect our constitutional value, which are our constitutional value. We are not understanding, in fact, majority of the people, they are not trusting on this, our core values of the constitution. And that is the crisis. And that's why Kargil happens, then you suddenly use the slogan Jana Gana Mana national anthem at the movie. That means you are true nationalist. But
Right,
at the
right,
same
right.
time, those families are victims. You're helping them. Those who are in a Kargil or in a COVID period was going become to be. So this is our culture. So what we need to revisit this kind of thinking, come with the strategic plan, and that strategic plan is not one day game. It is, I said, Americans are not thinking 2020; they are thinking 2040 onwards. Chinese are thinking 2030 on. What about us? We are thinking about what will happen next month.
Right,
Or
right.
today, what is our day-to-day? Our issues are completely changed, and that's why India is lacking strategic culture. And Baba Sahib Ambedkar narrated in this his speeches. He said that why we are lacking because we are just political interest. We are using all the games, and that's why we need to come out with the theory that what is the political interest, not political interest, not what BJP is saying or what Congress is saying. Whatever. We have to come out with these are our interests, and we will focus on it. But unfortunately, that thinking is not coming up from the policymakers.
Sir, the way you have explained it very clearly that the we are tuned and cultured to look at only the political interests, not the national interests. And as you have made clear in your presentation, Baba Sahib Ambedkar was perhaps the only only leader of that time who was talking about nation and the making of nation, how we
Yes.
can come together as a nation, how we can protect the national interest. And he saw that national interest in very important values as you narrated, sir. And I think that's a very beautiful explanation, and that's a very beautiful objective that if everybody pursues the national interest instead of parochial political interest, or party interest, or community interest, or caste interest, or their group interest, or their guilt interest. I think unless that is done, unless there is that consciousness of a kind which talks about nation instead of talking about the caste, instead of talking about communities, instead of talking about regions, I don't think that the kind of security that we need to build in our country will be a possibility. Sir, it was a wonderful session with you, sir. And I think what we learned today is quite a lot. We never thought about, and I'm sure that a lot of people who are listening to us today never looked at or thought about this very important contribution of Baba Sahib Ambedkar, not only in nation building but also securing the lives of the millions of people, because conflict anywhere is not good for anybody. And the kind of efforts that Baba Sahib Ambedkar put to create this country into a homogeneous sort of workable country is something that you narrated very wonderfully today, sir. And I think we have learned a lot from this, sir. Before we conclude, I would like to request you to offer your concluding remarks today on what we just discussed and what you talked.
Let me conclude with this. Post-COVID challenge would be complete different. In the name of physical distancing and social distancing, there will be a lot of challenges, particularly our community. Wherever we are, we need to share our knowledge, share our whatever in a forms, ideas, thoughts among to each other, help to this new generation, create a new society where we can manage. Let me give a particular in the field of higher education. Thing will change so rapidly. Already
Yeah.
our enrollment is very limited in higher education, and this post-COVID is good opportunity for them to, instead of massification of higher education, it will become for the limited people, and they may success in this idea. So what we need to uh, come together. We need to be very focused on this issue, that how we will share our ideas, thought to each other, and this Ambedkar Karwa should continue not for this only COVID period. Will continue a long period where new generation, young minds will come with the new ideas. So with this word, I think a lot of discuss. Thank you, Mangesh. Thank you, all your team members. This was wonderful interaction, and uh, this would be a good opportunity for me also. I think COVID period, I'm continuously engaging other webinar also, but this was a special, and particularly on Sunday, you know that in active as activists, Sunday is a special day for us. But having a special having a special day for everyone, we are patiently listens to most of our colleagues, our fraternity, and looking forward to their comments, and do visit our department website. Come to Savitribai Phule Pune University. Send your student or any kind of academic inputs. We will definitely add it in them. Thank you. Jai Bhim, Jai Bharat.
Before we end this session, I would like to offer my sincere gratitude and respect to Professor here, because I know Professor for a long time, and his commitment to his department, to his centers is exemplary, and he has done wonderful work, not only in university, but he is somebody who will go out of way to help students to pursue their higher education, and he's someone who brings in a lot of creative ideas to the department, and he has done so many good things. I think these two courses that now he's going to commence on this in this academic year are vitally important. And I think, as I said, that nowhere in our country these two courses are can be found. And I would encourage a lot of young people to please join these courses. Get your degrees in social and public policies. Get your degrees in national security and Baba Saheb Ambedkar. I think these are the cutting edge areas which can offer you a lot of opportunities to really forge your careers. And Professor has a lot of contacts, and he's somebody who has done a lot of MOUs, international MOUs with foreign universities. He's somebody who has that international outlook. I think it will be a good opportunity for a lot of young people to join these courses. And thank you so much for listening to us, and thank you so much, Professor, for joining us today. And we would like to see you again and again, learn from you about a lot of things that we need to learn. And till such time, Jai Bhim. And